Welcome to the Visionaries Only Podcast, presented by Energy 11, hosted by me, Jay Thomas, and this is episode number 2, featuring Brandon Collins. He is a screenwriter. He also told me to mention an educator, because that's how we met. You'll see that in a few minutes. We talk about that a little bit. And a comedian as well, a damn good one at that. He hosts these events for Juneteenth, and actually it's not just Juneteenth. It's he did one during Black History Month. I wasn't able to get the episode out before then, but he hosts these events called Drunk Black History, and it's super dope. He's always there with a comedian, and you know, it's exactly what it sounds like. They get drunk, we get drunk as an audience, and they teach us about Black history, and it's really funny. It's educational. It's great. He's also out in LA, so he's working as a screenwriter at Universal. So it's an interesting conversation about movies, a lot of movies and shows, but we also talk about his journey and his decision to uproot his life in New York to move all the way out to LA for his dream. And I think that's really what this show is about, is showing people that are willing to make those risks for their dreams. We talk a lot about the MCU, so any Marvel heads, you're going to love this. We also talk about 3 movies that I watched in 2023 for the first time, and they're all deemed classics. So watch till the end of the episode and you'll see the 3 movies that I just recently watched in 2023, and I play a game with him of overrated, underrated, because movies that are made years and years ago, sometimes they just don't age. So you'll see the 3 movies. One of them is 100% going to piss you off, especially if you're into comedy. Wink, wink. So hope you enjoy the episode. And as always, please subscribe to the channel if you like what you're hearing. Hit us with a like. If you're listening to this on audio only, please rate us as well. So it really helps us out. And enjoy the episode. I have an illustrious guest in the building. Well, virtually, of course. All the way from LA. We got screenwriter, storyteller, podcaster, comedian, Brandon Collins. Thank you for being on the show, brother.
Thank you for having me. You also got educator. That's how we met. That's wild that you just like omitted that. You're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. I'm like,
and
right,
educator. Well. And educator. Yeah, we were at a Flatiron School together, and I didn't know that you were so heavy into the comedy stuff until I went to Drunk Black History.
Did you go to the in-person one or online?
In person.
Oh, were you at the one where Dulce Sloan got really, really drunk and kind of hijacked the show at the end?
I think so. So. It was in New York. I was kind of sitting in the back, and were
there
on stage.
Other Flatiron people there?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I just know that I was like, I got to make sure Brandon sees that I came here. So I went to the side so he wasn't coming off stage. And but I don't know if anybody else on Flatiron
was it a big state? Like, I'm trying to think, like, because I've done a lot. It's probably in Brooklyn, or was it in Manhattan?
It was in Manhattan.
Oh, the caveat one. Okay. Yeah. That was still a cool spot. But okay, so that wasn't the one where Dulce Sloan got really drunk, but that was still a fun show. Yeah, we've had what's Candyman at the show?
Dog, I don't even remember.
You remember Candyman because we convinced a brother to say Candyman in the mirror 5 times for just $1, and I was going to go to 100. It was so crazy. Like, we started, was it $5 or $1? It was something small. And again, I was willing to go to 100 because I know, like, Black people are like, I'm not messing with Candyman.
Right.
And this brother was just like, I'll do it. Like, the first bid, like, I'll do it. And I'm like, all right, well, I just saved $95.
It definitely wasn't that one. You know what you did at that show? You had 2 people come onto the stage, and you asked them, they had to finish this phrase. And it was all Black phrases that you heard your parents say.
Oh, it was Family Feud. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
I remember that.
That was great.
That was a fun show, man.
That was a fun show. Well, since you're so heavy into comedy, I'm curious now. You were in New York for a while. You've been in LA. How long now?
I've been to LA about 8 months now. Yeah, I had This is after being in New York for about 17 years. After just buying a house out of New York, I had less than a month to move out here. Yeah, it's been a big change.
That's crazy. What's the difference between the comedy scene in LA versus New York?
I mean, I think that's tough for me to answer for a few reasons. One, I have been in New York for so long. I already kind of like, I knew who's who in the comedy world in New York. People knew who I am, not exactly because I'm a great comedian or anything, which I'm definitely not. I have a lot of work to do, but because I produce so many cool shows that people know about. Like, I have an extensive network because of the shows I've cultivated. And so, like, in New York, at least, like, I know I can connect with people or hit up somebody and be like, hey, do you know about a show I could do? Or, what advice would you have here? Whereas in LA, I didn't know anybody really in the comedy scene. I had about a handful of comedians that I knew were out here. Only two of them like were involved in shows that I could get on. So I essentially had to start from scratch out here. And it's weird out here, man. The comedians are very odd. The comedy is just weird. I've gone to a few open mics, and sometimes they just play music. Like, they don't even do comedy stuff. They're just like drumming on a seat or like just rambling. It's like, it's very bizarre out here. But I'm starting to get back on stage a little bit more because I am trying to film and record a half hour this
nice.
in June. So gotta start, hitting the pavement and like, get on those stages and trying to get these laughs out.
Yeah. I know the audience gotta be so different because New York is different.
It is different. I think in New York though, you have to be quicker. Like, you have to be quicker in to the joke. In LA, a lot of people are very slow. It's mostly deliberate, but it's very, very slow. And you have to kind of wait for the punchline. Whereas in New York, like, you got to make people laugh immediately, and then you can take your time. But you have to do something pretty quick up top to grab everyone's attention.
One thing that I see with New York comedians versus like, and it maybe not even New York specifically. Maybe it's like East Coast versus maybe like West Coast comedians. One thing that I see with some of them is like New York comedians, they're so over the top. And with New York, with West Coast comedians, I feel like there's maybe just a little bit more reserved and a little bit more chill, which kind of goes with kind of the vibe of each one of those coasts.
I would say so. Yeah, that makes the most sense. Yeah, comedy is just different out here. It's very quirky. It's kind of like being around like the cast of Freaks and Geeks, but like all the time. That's how I would describe it. It's like these weirdos that know that they're weird, but also kind of want to be cool. Hollywood's a different beast. I thought New York was wild, but being out here in LA, like, I've seen stuff that would make New Yorkers shaking their boots. I've literally seen my wife like wide-eyed and say, I can't believe we just saw that, or that just happened here. Yeah,
somebody doing a line of coke in the bathroom as soon as you walk in.
No, bro, it's even crazier than that. On the metro out here, there's a homeless dude that came on the train, smoked crack, did a jig, and then saw another homeless crackhead, and they started dancing together. It's like, and they didn't know each other from what I understood of what they were saying to each other. They're just like, oh, baby, yeah, baby. And then just started dancing after smoking crack. And I'm like, well, that's the most stereotypical thing I've seen in ages. But also, like, how, Sway? Yeah, it literally is the Wild West out here.
Oh, my God, bro, that is... Bro, that's some pooky stuff, bro.
It's crazy out here, bro. It's also depressing too, because there has not gone a week where the wife and I go outside and you don't see at least one naked person, whether they're out publicly on the street or on the metro or something. It's the mental health crisis out here in LA is real. Yeah. Like, I thought DC was bad, but this is real bad.
Yeah, I knew it was bad when I went to San Francisco. And it's a wild juxtaposition when you walk by like the Salesforce building, and the Salesforce building is stunning. It's beautiful. It's all glass. It has great architecture. Right across the street is like a row of like tents of people on the street. It's crazy.
Yeah, when I was walking to Netflix for the first time, there's a row of tents. It's like, it's not Skid Row, but it looks like Skid Row because I've gone by there. And I'm like, it's a block or two away from the Netflix studios, like the Netflix lot and stuff like that. It's just crazy.
Yeah. So right across from the Staples Center, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
that's the area that's pretty. I stayed down there a few years ago, and it was this really nice Airbnb type hotel thing. You go outside. It's like, oh, you're just all out here. This is where
Mm-hmm.
you guys sleep.
Yeah.
Okay. It's crazy.
When was the last time you used Airbnb?
The last time I used Airbnb might have been, I want to say roughly 6 to 7 months ago.
Okay. Did you have a good experience? Because I'm done with Airbnb.
You're done with Airbnb. Why?
Yeah,
Why
because
are
of
we done
cleaning
with
fees.
Airbnb?
Because of cleaning fees, and a lot of the owners of these properties saying, "Oh, you also need to do these things around the house." It's wild, man. Like, you charging me a few $100 for a cleaning fee, and then you're still asking me to clean the room or the apartment that I'm staying at. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
What's crazy is when I stayed at that Airbnb, there was my girlfriend and I, we stayed on a bed. And then as soon as we stayed on the bed, we laid on the bed, we're like, whoa, kind of sinking here. What the hell's going on? So you look underneath the bed, and the middle of the bed is like caved in because the pillar broke and it's sideways. So you call up the guy, and he comes with like two of his mans, and they just start repairing this bed in front of us. And I'm like, this is exactly why we go to the Sheraton. I understand now.
Yep.
Like, this is crazy. And then you hear about all the things about people like hiding cameras and teddy bears and shit like that. Like, it's so wild. I wanted to ask you about your reason for going out to LA, obviously to pursue your dreams of not only obviously comedy, but also screenwriting. Yes. And you're working at the Universal's Writers Lab.
Yep.
And I wanted to know, how did that come into fruition?
The pandemic, man. The pandemic opened up a lot of things, one of which was me kind of revealing to a lot of my friends, even though I am in comedy, that I write a lot of screenplays. I just never show them to anybody. And my friend Tommy, shout out to Tommy Ray, he is like, yo, you should submit to writers programs. And I was like, what are those? He's like, studios, they have writer programs for features and TV. You never, sometimes they lead to work and stuff like that. Like, you never know what could happen. I was like, cool. And so I looked up some programs. I saw Universal had one, and Universal movies have shaped my whole childhood. Jurassic Park changed my life right when I first saw that movie in 1993. And so I'm like, I'll apply. And what you had to submit was a feature-length script and a treatment for another script. And essentially a treatment's the character breakdown and essentially the whole story in acts. And so I already had some stuff like that ready to go. So just submitted that, and then had a few rounds of interviews, and it kept progressing. And I was just like, yeah, but I'm not going to get this. There's no way. And then I had the final round of interviews, and then I just waited for like more than half a year.
Wow.
Or like, we just kept getting emails every month, like saying, hey, you're still in consideration, but we're working on some stuff with the WGA, and we'll let you know when we know. Right. And, I already started a new job. I was like getting really settled. The wife and I were in a really like stable financial situation. And then out of nowhere, what's crazy is the day that it happened, the day that I got the phone call was like a really emotional day for me, because right before I got the call from Universal, I had a roundtable interview with Anthony Anderson and Tracy Ellis Ross regarding the last season of Blackish. And that show just means a lot to me for a plethora of reasons, but to be able to tell them both that their show represented and gave voice to some of the feelings I had, is particularly the Obama election episode, where I don't know if you recall, Anthony Anderson has this really powerful monologue that all Black people had, like about a fear that all Black people had during the election of 2008. And when he got inaugurated, when Obama got out that car to walk to the Capitol to be sworn in, he was like, the fear that we all had of what might happen to that man. And like that, and I got to tell him and Tracy, like, that was such a powerful moment that I'll never forget in TV history. And then as soon as I was able to call, 5 minutes later, I got, LA number ringing up my phone. And then they're like, yeah, we want you to be in the program. And I was like, wow. And I was already like really raw and emotional after that call, because it brought up a lot of feelings, and especially given like, the recent political climate and everything like that, and like the past 4 or 5 years or so, and then to get that call, which is supposed to be exciting and terrifying.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm like in the basement of my house that I'm like customizing to be my little man cave, and I'm looking around like I might have to say goodbye to all this. You know what I mean? Like ASAP. We decided to keep the house for now, but you know what I mean? It was like I'm finally getting settled, and now I'm like, not only am I giving up control, but there's so much uncertainty that I've never faced in my life, and that was a lot. That was a heavy day.
That's interesting. How did you make that decision? Because you have like, you almost like in the middle of like to your left, there's this life of contentment, this life of consistency, security, and then to the right is your dreams, right? Like how do you process in that moment, especially with a wife to consider? How do you process that in that moment?
Well, I mean, I communicate everything with my wife, so she knew every step of the way of this process, and she was incredibly encouraging. In fact, she was more excited about the prospect of moving out to LA than I was. And so for me, it's like I've never felt held back from my dreams, and that's something I really appreciate about having my wife as a partner, is that she's always been very supportive. And I've been fortunate enough just to like work at places that were really supportive of like my other endeavors, especially because I never let them impact my day job. Like you mentioned earlier that you didn't know I was too deep into comedy, but a lot of the people that are former workplace, especially my teaching staff and stuff, they knew, because they often would praise me at how I was able to balance like my creative endeavors with being professional at work and still making time to make sure they had professional development, or like we did like team events outside of the campus. And so like I just never felt constricted. And if there was ever any time where someone did try to like restrict me on what I could or could not do outside of work, I was very clear on like, well, that's a different conversation. Because the employer I had after Flatiron, about a month into the job, they were like, my boss flagged concerns from the CEO regarding my movie review podcast and some of like the content I was doing. And and I'm like, but that's a movie review podcast and we're coding boot camp. Like, what does that have to do? That's not related, right? And that was such a different response to when I first met the co-founders at the time of Flatiron School. I had like, when I had my first interview with them, they one of the owners, co-founders was like, oh yeah, you do like the comedy and stuff. I saw some of your videos. Like they were already excited about that versus this response. And so I immediately told my boss, I'm like, well, if that's a problem, like I'm good to end this now, because I'm not going to stop doing my creative stuff because this corporate job is like, for whatever reason, that seems to be a conflict or offensive in nature. When I'm like, it's completely separate.
Yeah, no, for real. And that's such an interesting take, because I think like sometimes when we think about like what we want to do in our careers, we think about the security that having like this really safe job provides us. And I think about it even in my own life, like doing this podcast right now. I'm like, like, man, I was doing product management and it was great. I love product management. It was fantastic, but there's nothing that I love more than doing this right here. But this doesn't pay the bills yet.
Yes.
Right. And I've found that like jumping into this space is such an interesting confrontation with yourself. Like, who are you really? Right.
Yep.
And that's why I'm so fascinated about you taking that leap. And you talk about it being terrifying. So you get to LA, you decide this is what you're going to do. What's like that first week? The first week at the job is like, it's like such a feeling out process. It's kind of like going to school and everybody knows each other already. And you're like, you don't even know where to sit. You're like, God damn.
Well, I was very fortunate. I think I was very fortunate because all the writers were like really new, and like only one of them had been in the previous program before. So we're all kind of like trying to figure out what this is, and it's also just like a culture shock for me, like moving from New York. And so, we just talked about Airbnb. I learned the hard way about like how far things can be from each other. Cause I saw on the map, on Google Map, hey, this Airbnb is a 10-minute drive supposedly to the studio.
Yep.
And I didn't understand how Hollywood Hills work, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
yes, in 10 minutes in theory, but to get a Uber to drive all the way up these tiny, really tight hills to pick me up from this Airbnb at the top of the hill and then take me, and they're only getting like $6 for that. You know, I had to go to that studio significantly early to try to hopefully get an Uber to pick me up. And sometimes it would take me about almost an hour to get someone to finally like fulfill the job, because sometimes people would get halfway through and then be like, I'm not going up that hill. And I had beef with my Airbnb manager at the time because for the second week we were supposed to be there, there was construction at the bottom of the hill. And so no cars could get up. They had to go all the way around another way. And I had to have explicit instructions on how to do that. Otherwise, they kept canceling. And she didn't tell us anything about construction or what have you. And so I'm like, well, we're going to leave because this isn't convenient. So I want a refund. And she was like, nope. And so that's kind of another reason why I swore off Airbnb. But again, I was very fortunate that other writers were, you know, also new to this experience. And so we were kind of able to lean on each other. And when I first got here, I did lean extensively on my comedy network. And my second week, actually, because I reached out to the Lucas brothers, who were nominated for Oscars for their writing on Judas and the Black Messiah. I was like, hey, I would love to hang out with you guys. You know, now I'm out here and you guys are doing something at Universal. I'm at Universal. And they were like, oh, we're doing this table read for our script that we wrote for Judd Apatow. You want to come through? And I was like, sure. And so I didn't know in LA, everything starts on time or like 5 minutes after. And so I got there the reading was supposed to be at 10 a.m. I got there at 9:45 a.m. I'm like, you know, just a little bit early, but like not that early where I look like a nerd. And so I'm sitting in this empty conference room in like this really fancy hotel in Beverly Hills. And there's copies of the scripts on all the chairs for the Lucas Brothers script. And I'm like scanning through it. And this guy comes up to me. Mind you, when I first was interviewing at Universal, they were like, what director do you want to emulate the most? And I was like, well, I love like Spike Lee, Ryan Coogler, Steven Spielberg. But I actually want to be like the Black Judd Apatow because he elevates all of his funny friends. The people that he think are really talented, he gives them platforms to really shine.
That's so true.
And so I'm scanning through the script and then I hear, hey, man, I'm Judd. And I look up and Judd Apatow's right in front of me. He's like, has his hand out to shake my hand. And, you know, I got to talk to Judd for like 2 minutes about just why I'm here and stuff like that. And he was really, really nice. And then the room started filling up with like all these incredible comedy writers, comedians, and a lot of like Bubbles from The Wire was there, like to read a character. You had some cast members from Southside there. I was sitting next to Justin Simeon, who wrote and directed Dear White People and Bad Hair. And I'm like, oh, this is Hollywood. Like,
this is
that.
Hollywood.
That was cool. That was like one of the few moments where I'm like, okay, this is pretty dope. And I've been fortunate enough to like network with a lot of people out here since I've been out here and like meeting a lot of stars and being in the same room as like celebrities and stuff. But I'll be lying if I didn't say it's very lonely out here too. From June to October, I was out here by myself because my wife was back in New York just watching over the house, and she also had to have extensive surgery in August. And so it was a really lonely summer for me. Like my birthday was out here by myself. I didn't really know anybody. Yeah, but you know, I powered through, but I really cherish like those first few weeks. I think that like really got me excited and helped me get through that tough summer.
Wow. And then getting into a room like that, does it feel like a little bit of like validation? Like, yeah, I'm supposed to be there.
In a way, yes, because I've always said like I didn't want to come out to LA unless I had something to do. Like I didn't want to just come out to LA to say I went to LA and did some comedy shows or something. I want to have a purpose. That's what a lot of things, like when I meet my heroes, like I'm like, I don't want to talk to Chris Rock unless I have something really dope to talk to him about. I don't want to just be like, hey, I'm a fan, and you know, you changed my stand-up life or whatever. And so like, yes, like being able to like, because people in the room like that I knew, they were like, oh, Brandon, what the hell are you doing out here? And I'm like, oh, I'm writing at Universal, you know, I'm developing a feature there, which is exactly what I'm doing. So it's you know, because I have a lot of TV writer friends out here, people that I have like are acquaintances or I've done a lot of shows and stuff with, and so that definitely helped. And being in features is so kind of rare. That was also like a good like way for me to connect with people on a different level and get some, you know, get respect from them in regards to like, oh, like he's doing the work. And for a lot of them, they didn't even know I was a writer. They just saw me as a producer, stand up. And so that was also cool too, to get taken seriously like in the writing, because I never thought I would have opportunities to be taken seriously as a screenwriter. I always thought it'd just be a hobby. You know what I mean?
Nice. Yeah, no, I completely understand. And now that you're writing at Universal, what's kind of like your day to day, like as a writer at Universal?
Very open, and it's very open. But I try to be very deliberate on what I work on. So I'm not just working on the Universal script. I'm also working on some pilots. One of which is about our former employer, working there, and it's been a lot of fun writing that one.
I can't wait.
But I'm also writing like a horror thriller. I'm writing like an action thriller based on my Boy Scout years and stuff like that. So I'm working on a bunch of other stuff outside of the Universal thing, just because at the end of this program, I want to have a catalog of work to show. And ideally, if I can get notes from the studio on those other projects, I can also say, yeah, I got got insight from Universal, or my producer mentor Malcolm D. Lee on this stuff. And so I've been just really, I have open schedule, but I've been very deliberate in making sure that I'm writing as much as I can. I'm reading as much as I can. So one of my side gigs is I'm actually reading scripts for a company. And so that allows me to get better at editing my own writing, because I'm reading other writers' scripts. So there's no set schedule. I do have meetings and sessions with my mentors and stuff like that. But it's pretty fluid. Nice. My schedule. Sweet.
Something that jumped out at me when you were just talking about it. You were in the Boy Scouts?
Yeah. I grew up in Michigan, right. Grew up in Michigan, single mother, only child. And so my mom thought it would be a good way, not just to instill like good values in me, but to get, have male role models around me. And so I was a Cub Scout, and then I went to Boy Scouts, and I stayed in Boy Scouts. I didn't make Eagle, but I stayed in long enough where I got to do like the older teenager trips, which are a little bit more mature and intense. So like staying on a beach, like it was like a Boy Scout owned beach for like a week, and that was like some Lord of the Flies type of shit. And then one trip was sailing off the coast of Key West on a catamaran for about like 6 days or so. And so a script that I'm developing is about me being the only Black kid on that trip, and I encountered sharks when we were there, and those white people did not help me. I had to get out the boat myself. But
sharks.
My script is about what if like we got capsized and sharks came at us, and so because that's often a thought I have, and that was a wild experience. It was also crazy because like we had to train for that trip, because the swimming test was you had to swim against the current around the catamaran like 6 times. And so this is how rich some kids were in my neighborhood growing up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Okay. We got to train for 3 months at this one kid's mansion because he had an indoor pool. Right. So that was my every other day, like was training at this swimming pool.
Right.
And we had to do, before we did the swimming test, the captain gave us like an overview of like sea creatures we might encounter. I had never heard of a sea urchin before, but they showed a picture of that black spiky thing, and I was like, what the hell is that? Like, oh yeah, you got to be careful with these because they sit on the surface of the ocean and they can be really, really painful. Oh, and Jesus. That was like the first slide she showed us, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a nightmare. And then at the end of the presentation, I remember she wrapped it up by saying, okay, so now we have to talk about anchor watch assignments. I was like, anchor, what does that mean? She's like, oh yeah, so when we set the anchor before we settle in for the night, we have to do rotations throughout the night to make sure the anchor doesn't get loose and we get off course. And I was like, what do you mean throughout the night? And she's like, yeah, so there's going to be times when we have to rotate and you will do a shift at some point for 2 hours between midnight and 6 a.m. And I was like, if y'all want me to be up at 3 a.m. looking at the ocean for 2 hours, we're going to be 8 dead people in the ocean. Like, I want to fall asleep. What are you talking about? That was one of the craziest things I've ever been told by somebody with a straight face.
When you make this into a movie or a show, this is gonna be fantastic.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying. Like that's That's already like the horror element before we even get to the sharks in my script. Like just
right.
the idea of having to wake up at 4 a.m. to just look at the ocean, because when you're in the ocean, there's nothing around you. It's just water.
Right.
And I just think about the creatures below us. I'm thinking about whales, which I hate. Think about sharks. Think about octopuses. I'm thinking about all that stuff. Nope.
You know what I think about is the parts that you can't see. So like it's just straight pitch blackness, and then you hear like in the back of you while you're turning this way, you just hear something behind you, and you're like, wait, what is that? Somebody hold on, somebody check that. Oh, I'm the only one up.
Yep,
it's just me.
I had to stay up with another scout, but which was not at all helpful either, because we're just two teenagers. Like, what are we gonna do?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I have very mixed experiences with the ocean, and so that was a wild trip.
Yeah,
to say the least.
Man, that you see, I'm visualizing in my mind how this would play out on screen, and it's sounding fantastic. I dabbled. I'm nowhere near the screenwriting experience as yourself, but I dabbled in writing. Was writing. Some friends and I were creating a pilot for a show. It was kind of like a modern day twist on a different world, right? And we were developing this show.
Unfortunately, that's already been made, called Grownish, but
exactly.
I feel you.
It was before Grownish. Funny enough,
it
was before Grownish. It was before Grownish.
Okay.
And we were developing. This was years and years ago, and unfortunately, it didn't go too far. But I had gotten really heavy into like the screenwriting and like watching videos of like script breakdowns and like reading books like Story. I forget the name of the author, but this is a great book named Story that gives you like this thick purple and black book that gives you like this unbelievable breakdown of building a story and its characters, etc. And what I realized is, and I realized this after I had written a bunch of scripts, I realized after that there's so much more structure in this art form than I even realized. And then I started to understand, like, in many art forms, it's a lot. It's like half art and half science with all of these art forms. So when you're writing these scripts and you're writing constantly, like, how are you balancing the creative side of it and the technical side of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I follow closely, I try to at least, the format in Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, which is like kind of like the Bible for new screenwriters, even though that guy wrote Blank Check, which is a Cuckoo Bananas Disney movie. But the first draft is essentially a bomber draft, and it took me a minute to kind of get through it without thinking about the technical aspect and making sure it's perfect, because no script is ever done. Even when you get it greenlit and you got the money in hand, that doesn't mean that the script is finished being revised. Like, whether you as the writer get called to do a rewrite or other writers are brought in, you know what I mean? Like, and so I just accepted that and just tried to push through to get the bomber draft out. What really got me over the finish line is, do you watch Atlanta?
Yes, I do.
The Goof Who Sat by the Door episode, that was so bonkers. And I was like, Black people, we can do this stuff, that I just like powered through. Like, after that episode, I finished my script in a week. I finished the rest of my script in a week, because I was just like, I shouldn't feel constrained, because I can go back and clean it up. Right. Yeah. And even with sitting out the script, first draft, my studio executive came back and was like, this is a good start, but like, I want you to get to this moment at this page, and I want you to get to this moment by this page. So he gave me parameters which fit with Save the Cat and like the different act breakdowns. And so that's like, I'm on the second draft now, and I'm cleaning it up to meet those benchmarks. Right. And so, and that wasn't required with the first draft necessarily, because no matter what, it's not going to be, it's very rare that you write a first draft and everyone's like, I have no notes. This can't be improved. You know what I mean? So, I just want to get the story out. I want to kind of give people an idea of what I'm trying to say and how I'm trying to say it, and then go from there, just because nothing's ever finished. You know, it's art. You know, it's kind of like, I remember I got really upset at, and I know we don't really talk about him anymore, but Kanye West, when he did the Life of Pablo album, and, you know, he released it and then he kept revising it. And so like, you had to keep like re-downloading it on Spotify or whatever, because he kept making tweaks to it. And I remember being frustrated by it, like, yo, just let us have this and like just leave it alone. But now I'm like, oh, like, because nothing is ever really finished, truly. And I'm sure if artists could go back and fix little things after it's been released, I'm sure they would want to, but it's just not ideal and it's not cost effective. But you know, in screenwriting, that's definitely, and just in writing in general, that's something you definitely need to accept.
Yeah, I love that you referenced Atlanta, because the one thing that I realized watching Atlanta, especially when you just watch something that was like conventional, and then you go watch Atlanta, you're like, there are no rules. Like there are literally no rules. Like I remember when I watched the first season of Atlanta, you know, they'll just have like one episode that just lives on its own.
Yep.
And I'm watching it, I'm like, wait, did I switch channels? Did I switch shows? Like what's happening? Right. And when you realize and the thing is, like, there's like this uncomfortableness that you get over as an audience member when you watch something unconventional. And that's what makes watching Atlanta, the writers and of course, Gambino so dope, because when you watch it as an audience member, he's comfortable saying, I want you uncomfortable because this is unlike anything you've ever watched. And if it's good, you'll power through it.
Yeah, man. I take a lot of inspiration from Atlanta, especially lately as I'm writing a pilot about my experience growing up in the suburbs as a Black kid that, you know, was told by his family that we were like upper middle class, but in reality we were like lower middle class, almost like low income class, and just trying to keep up with the Joneses in some ways. And me just dealing with my identity and not really having Black friends until I got to a certain age. And so like I'm trying to tell that in like, because that's already a different story than what like a lot of us have seen, but I also am trying to tell it in a unique, creative way that keeps you on your toes, right? Because if you kind of can figure out as a viewer, oh, I know where this is going and what this is, then you potentially lose them pretty quickly, right?
Sure.
And so I've definitely taken a lot of cues from Atlanta's playbook.
Yeah. When you're getting notes from other folks, especially on something so personal like a story about your life and your experiences, does it feel like when someone's giving you notes, you're kind of like, all right, if it's about structure and you're asking like questions about maybe some technical stuff, I hear you. But if you're saying like, that doesn't sound realistic, then you're like, all right, I'm dismissing that. Like how are you discerning like what advice I should really take when it comes to something like this personal?
I always try to understand the other perspective that I'm getting and where it's possibly coming from. And then from there, I try to think about, okay, what if I were to implement this piece of feedback, what purpose would it serve? Does it serve what I'm trying to say? Does it serve my characters that I've created? Does it serve the world I built? And does it serve the commercial viability of the story? You know, like if, you know what I mean? Like, if you know, because we have different writers in the program that have different career aspirations and different types of movies they want to make, right? So a lot of like few folks want to work on like focus features, independent kind of stuff, and then some people want to do big action movies, and some people want to do horrors. And so I'm like, okay, like from their perspective, how could I potentially apply this? And then if I don't want to apply it, you know, what's the reason why? Is it ego? Is it that it just is so irrelevant that doesn't, you know, make sense to include this into my next revision? That's kind of how I try to like sort through the feedback. The feedback that I take the most seriously is like from my studio exec and my producer. Like those are the people that ultimately could get me in the room. Either they sign off on saying like, yeah, like this is a dope idea, or I really like what you're doing, so let's continue developing stuff together. Or they can get me in the room with another executive producer and be like, this guy wrote something that fits with what your studio is looking for or what your production company is looking for.
Got you. That makes sense to me. I want to pivot a little bit because I would be remiss if I had a movie critic on the podcast and we didn't talk movies. I'm going to first start with something that's a little near and dear to my heart, the MCU.
Okay.
And This is a sore topic. All right. It's a sore topic
Okay.
because I'm getting really frustrated with where they're heading. And it's not that I'm frustrated in isolation of the MCU. I'm actually looking at the competition, DC, when they released Batman, which was fantastic. They released Black Adam, which I enjoyed for what it was.
Okay. All right. Sure.
I caveat with what it was.
Sure. Okay.
Big blockbuster movie. But I think the taste of Doctor Strange and Thor Love and Thunder is still resonating in my mouth.
Those are rough. Moon Knight had potential and then just kind of like fell apart for me. Miss Marvel, I greatly enjoyed.
I thought Miss Marvel was good. Yep.
And what else came out last year?
There was Moon Knight, there was Miss Marvel, there was She-Hulk.
The She-Hulk, which was that got really crazy. The Werewolf by Night was pretty fun, but then it got kind of childish at the end, which I was like surprised by. So I definitely understand what you're saying. I'm not excited at all for Ant-Man 3. I'm like, that just character just is kind of lame, but I am excited for Guardians of the Galaxy 3 because James Gunn got to come back and he's going out on his terms. I don't think I think that's going to be one of the few Marvel movies that's probably pretty isolated from the overall narrative that they're building with like the King War, just because I think half of them aren't going to be continuing in the MCU, right? Based on what we've heard. So I definitely hear what you're saying. I have confidence with Kevin Feige kind of really leaning in on Dustin Creedon, I believe is his name, the gentleman that directed Shang-Chi.
I like Shang-Chi a lot.
Doing it's not Secret Wars, it's the King Dynasty. And from everything I'm hearing about Secret Wars, I think that's going to be the big reset.
Okay.
And I can see, because it sounds like they're bringing everybody in it, not just like from the MCU, but like we're talking Hugh Jackman, we're talking Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire. And I think that's going to be, all right, look at us like giving homage the same way we did in Spider-Man to all these iterations of characters that you love. Wink, reset everything. And just probably just lean in fully on mutants and occasionally bring back the new iterations of Marvel characters we like Black Panther and Iron Man and things. I think that's the best case because so many people are clamoring for mutants. And I think if you add mutants into the current narrative, it just is going to get messy real quick. Whereas if you have this big spectacle that's even bigger than Endgame, you use that to reset everything. And I feel like the actors, they by that point they'll have had enough bread where they should be full. You know what I mean? I feel like they shouldn't be too greedy. Like if I'm Chris Hemsworth, I'm really like, do I need to keep being Thor?
Right.
Like, for real. Do I need to keep doing this?
Yeah. And that also, I will never forgive She-Hulk for completely turning Daredevil into a comedy. Like I was like, I loved Daredevil, the Punisher, Jessica Jones, and I'll stop right there because everything else. Luke Cage had its moments.
I love Luke Cage at the beginning, and then they killed Mahershala Ali really, really fast.
Bro, why?
I mean, it's fine. It's fine. Like he was better than that show. I didn't watch the second season because I think Mike Coulter he's just too low energy for me. I was just like, I can't get into this. And then of course Iron Fist was just garbage.
I couldn't get into Iron Fist. I didn't even watch the mashup that they had. I was like, nah, I think I'll pass on that.
But I get what you're saying about Daredevil being like a little bit comedic and everything, but that character's always been kind of a comedic and then has the dark element. I think once we get him back in Hell's Kitchen, that it will be a Marvel version of the Netflix show, which the Netflix show was really, really dark and really, really violent. So I understand why they want to do a new iteration and pull back a little bit to make it more accessible. So I'm not completely terrified of what Marvel is going to do with Daredevil, just because if Kevin Feige is willing to kind of shake up continuity like that, like he's got to obviously either have a really good story or have faith that, the talent is going to bring a new iteration that people will fall in love with. I'm hoping.
I'm hoping as well. And tell me if you think this like theory rings true, because I watched Thor Love and Thunder, which my like one sentence around that is that it feels like a spoof of a superhero movie. And I then randomly watched The Avengers, where Thor in the original Avengers comes down when he kidnaps Loki from when he gets captured.
Yep.
They land on this barren area, and they're talking in this like this, they sound like Shakespeare, right? And I'm like, they did such a 180 with Thor's character. I was cool with him, having the gut. I was like, but I was cool with it. Mainly because Endgame has that was one of the greatest like endings of a movie ever. I was cool with that. But man, like the way that they've turned Thor into a joke, it's driving me crazy. And my theory is that they saw the success of something like Deadpool, where it's all comedy. Ryan Reynolds is a comedic actor. He's hilarious. One of my favorite actors. And the movie goes crazy. So they're like, well, they seem to like comedy in these movies. Let's crank this up. Instead of just Robert Downey Jr. being like the comedic relief, let's crank this all the way up. And now everybody's a comedian. There's like, Steve Rogers is a straight man. That's really it,
It's Marvel's definitely diluted comedy in film, because it's hard for a big budget comedy to get made these days, or an adult comedy to be released theatrically, because Marvel does all these clips so often, no matter what the subject matter is. Like, because I think the thing that disappointed me most about Love and Thunder was it doubled down on the silliness of Ragnarok, which I thought had a pretty good balance, because Kate Blanchett played such a badass villain that it kind of brought levity to the comedy that we saw, right? And then in Love and Thunder, they essentially neutered a really dope villain with Christian Bale. First of all, you get Christian Bale to finally do a Marvel movie, and then you give him that, or that's what you edited it to be. And I'm like, he's the God Butcher. We didn't see him butcher any gods except at the very beginning.
Exactly.
And I'm just like, crazy. What is going on? Like, he's supposed to be a dude that can legit actually kill Thor. And there was never once where I thought Thor's in legit danger. And that was frustrating. Like, I felt like that was a huge waste. That Love and Thunder was really rough. And Doctor Strange was very disappointing. I think because I just made a bigger movie in my head. I thought the Wanda killing it, or the Illuminati was pretty dope. And also I found it curious that like we're okay now with Professor X getting, like, Patrick Stewart getting got in these. Like, do you remember Logan?
Yes.
Like, I was so shocked when they killed Professor X. Spoiler alert, everybody. But when they killed him with the Wolverine clone, and he had dementia, and essentially he realized he might have killed all the X-Men.
Yep.
I was like, that's such a tragic thing. And then he gets killed, and you're like, I don't know what I was trying to say with that. It's that I was like, that was incredibly shocking. And the fact that they did it again, I was just kind of, oh, yeah, he died again. Like, again. I was like, Logan already did this, and a lot better.
That's funny. I know we're getting towards the end here, but I wanted to put myself on Front Street.
Okay.
I'll put myself on Front Street. I'm probably gonna get some flack for this from anybody that listens to this, and I'm probably gonna get flack from you. And I'm okay. I'm gonna put it out here. I'm gonna play a little game of overrated, underrated, right?
Okay.
But the 3 movies I've chosen are deemed classics, but the one thing about them that they all have in common is that I just saw them in 2023.
Like, just like within the past week and a half.
I just saw these movies in 2023. Okay. I'm prepared to be judged. All right. I'm gonna start with probably the biggest one. Pulp Fiction.
Okay. That's I think that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. No judgment on that one.
I think if you hadn't seen it up until this point, like, there's probably a deliberate reason why. And Pulp Fiction is not for everybody. Like, I saw that like shockingly young, and obviously a lot of stuff went over my head, but yeah, I can. Yeah, that's okay. That's not the worst.
So, in your mind, Pulp Fiction, overrated, underrated? Which one?
No, I think I would just go with rated. I know that's a cop
Just
out,
rated. Okay.
but it got the right amount of acclaim. It still has some some amazing quotes, and that script is fantastic. It's I think it's the second script I ever read growing up. Yeah, because my mom used to buy me these scripts. The first one she ever bought me was Scream, and then the second one was Pulp Fiction that I asked for.
Those are two violent scripts to get.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go now. This is just slightly. I'm gonna go slightly overrated.
Okay.
And it's not by much, but the writing holds up. Like, it is sensational. The thing that, and this is a personal thing, I just didn't like some of the unnecessary parts, which to me were Tarantino dropping some N-bombs. When they brought the spoiler alert, they brought the dead guy.
Yeah.
And did I tell you to bring this N-word, a dead N-word in my house? Did I tell you?
Very excessive.
It's very excessive. And then the other part is Ving Rhames getting
with the gimp. Yeah.
Getting taken out in the back. I was like, personally, I just don't want to see a big, strong black man getting taken advantage of by racist white folks like that. Like, that's just not my bag. I also putting myself on Front Street. I stopped watching Game of Thrones in episode 1 because there was a scene where I was like, whoa, okay. That's funny. A little bit much.
That's funny. When Game of Thrones first came on, I stopped watching episode 1, 2. But I stopped watching after season 1. I paused for a few years because for me, season 1 at the end, when spoiler everybody, Ned Stark gets got, I was like, well, they just killed the main character, so F this show. Like, I'm already watching Walking Dead, and they don't kill anybody, so I'm not gonna do 2 shows of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first episode is wild. Like, there's some wild stuff. Yeah,
so it was a bit much for me. So I'm gonna go slightly overrated. All right, next overrated, underrated. Ex Machina.
Ooh, underrated. I love that movie. That's a really tight script. Oscar Isaac, I think he blew up after that. Like, that was like a great role. Just that dance scene alone was a lot of fun. And it's just really unsettling. It's really creepy. And that ending is, whew. I was like, well, I mean, he kind of told you what she was going to do. So, like, it's, Well, what did you think?
I went underrated too. I watched that and I was like, this should be mandatory watching for human beings to understand. This was a quintessential battle of human versus AI. And the AI playing on all of this historical data to understand exactly how to manipulate this one person. And that ending is just so cold. It's so cold, and you forget. Even as an audience member, you get tricked. That's why I thought it was so fantastic. So I'm going underrated on that. Last one, Black people, please don't hate me.
Oh boy,
please don't hate me on this one. I just saw, and it's funny, I just saw this 2 days ago because I knew I was going to do this on this interview.
Okay,
Coming to America. I know.
Boy. Oh, boy.
It's the first time he's judging me.
Even a black kid that grew up in the suburbs that had very little black friends. Yeah, buddy. That's a rough one.
Yeah. Saw it for the first time. Are you going overrated or underrated on Coming to America?
I am going underrated. That's one of the best movies of all time. It's one of the best comedies of all time. So,
really,
yeah, man, I love that movie. That's one of the, I love quoting that movie, and it's just Eddie Murphy. Oh man, it's so good. I hated the sequel, but that original, man, fantastic.
It's funny. I saw the sequel before the original, which was stupid.
Yeah, that's wild, dude.
Yeah, the sequel was bad. The sequel was bad. I'm gonna go. I'm sorry, everybody, but I'm going overrated. And here's the reason why. It's only because of the timing in which I watched it. This felt like a joke that somebody retold you, and you're like, "Oh, I guess you kind of had to be there, huh?"
Yeah.
Like that's kind of how it felt, because I find like movies like Rush Hour, like Bad Boys, and those type of movies had like better rewatchable value to me.
Yeah.
And Coming to America, I'm probably never going to revisit. But had I probably seen it when it first came out, I probably would have. It probably would have hit a little deeper.
Okay. All right, buddy.
All right, you can have my black card. You can have it.
I mean, I usually post like my guest appearances on like our Patreon for the movie podcast, and they're gonna probably roast you for saying that. That's wild. That's wild, bro.
I'm sorry, Patreon. It was a good movie though. Don't get it twisted. It was a really good movie. I didn't laugh a lot, but I enjoyed it.
Okay. Yeah.
But
right. Well, I think that's my key to leave. That's crazy.
I thought, what's my man name? The father, I'm
John Amos.
John Amos. I thought he was fantastic in there.
McDowell's,
Eddie was great. McDowell's, no, it was great. It was just a little overrated in 2023, but
right.
I think I'll leave it there. I think I've done enough damage to the movie, the movie community. Man, thank you so much, bro.
Absolutely.
For being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. You're so incredibly knowledgeable on the music industry. I mean, the movie industry.
No worries.
And I can't wait to see what you do next, brother, because I know it's going to be big.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate it.